Morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm going to talk for a little bit and open this up to questions. So I enjoy that, I think, the most. Let you guys sort of drive the bus. Appreciate it, Jamie, for the invitation. I think this is the third, maybe the fourth time that I've been here. And I always think in my mind that I'd like to talk about stuff like my grandkids or my kids or FEMA, could talk about that. That's exciting. But I think this room probably wants to hear about the city. And I think I'll start with the budget that was just passed. It's our fiscal year 23 budget, and our fiscal year cycle is May 1st, April 30th. Town of Normal is 1 month before us. Federal government's different, state government's different. Some local governments use a calendar year, but ours is May 1 to April 30. All funds, about $265 million. And the operating budget is about $122 million. So, I mean, they're large budgets. And for a community our size, we're just shy of 80,000, obviously part of a larger region. But the municipal services that we provide are actually more than a lot of communities that have larger populations. We have a park system that is actually municipal service. Solid waste collection is something that's done in-house instead of contracted out. So as far as a municipal delivery of services, we're a rather large community compared to many in the state of Illinois. I've been here, like Jamie was saying, it's coming up on 4 years here in a couple of months, and it's gone quick, and it always does. Now at 57 years old, I look back on different things in life, and I've got a 33-year-old daughter that I've got 2 grandkids. You blink, and you better not blink. For all the young ones out there, just cherish those moments with family, friends, things that are important in your life. COVID, let's talk about that real quick. I said I've got about 4 years on here. I think there's, like those scratch off lottery tickets, there's a COVID multiplier. When you talk about, how much time you spent in the trenches, and, it's just something that, I never thought that I would be a city manager and have gone through 2 disasters. You've got the tornado, and I would put COVID in that very same category. It's one where you try to communicate as best you can to the community. You know that you're always going to fall short. One thing that local government does not do a good job of is telling our story, letting the residents, the taxpayers know what's actually occurring in the community, and we've tried to step that up over the last year or 2 years, really from day one. But we actually hired a communications manager to lead those efforts for the city. So hopefully the information's getting out there more if you choose to access that. Let's go back to the budget. A number of things are occurring. I think everybody's familiar with the library expansion and remodel. It's one when I stepped into the community, I was met, Julian and Jeannie, the library executive director, came over and met. It was probably less than a year after they had a very public conversation about library expansion, renovation, or not renovation, it is renovation, but also what may occur in the downtown and the community. And spirits were pretty low, to be quite honest. The library, the conversation was where should it be? How big should it be? And a number of things like that. But the one thing was for sure, when I spoke to them back in 2018, is they needed a remodel. The building itself that they're currently in was dated, and they also needed additional space. You find a trend with libraries, and it follows still today, that they're trying to find their place, in communities nowadays. So some try to go rather large, try to create that community space for meetings and such. And that's exactly what had been presented to the community. And at the time, this was 5 years ago, The project was going to be about $45 million. It was, in today's dollars, it would be about $40 or $45 million. Julian and Jeannie went back to the drawing board. They came up with a remodel and expansion, a little bit more modest, but not shortchanging the needs of the community, with the expectation that there's going to be continued growth that we're experiencing. And they've put together about a $23 million project, and that's something that was approved, and construction is going to start very soon. So it's very exciting. Another large project that has been discussed for several years is Hamilton Road extension out there between Bunn and Commerce. It's going to, if completed, it's going to eliminate one of the most dangerous intersections, according to IDOT. It's in their 5% category as far as serious accidents, and that will be eliminated, and that construction is going to start this fall.
What intersection is that?
What is
Morrissey and Rhodes Lane? It's where Hamilton becomes Rhodes Lane.
Yeah.
It goes to Morrissey.
I knew it was Morrissey. I didn't know the cross. But that's something that's been talked about in this community for, in excess of a couple of decades. It's going to create that bypass on the southeast side of the community, connect to 51 north and south, eventually 55 and 74. So that's a project that we're going to put out for bid later this fall. And that's something that's going to be completed in the next year or so. Another large project is the O'Neill Pool. That's one that 40 plus years old. When I talked to Dan Brady, he talks about how he was a lifeguard there, years ago. And it served the community extremely well. It's seen better days. We've been putting Band-Aids on it, pre-COVID, putting Band-Aids on it just to open it every year. The state would allow it with the promise that we were going to come up with a long-term solution, next year. Well, that kept getting pushed. And the state definitely played along very well with us, and we're finally going to improve that area. One of the conversations, I'm going to take it down this path on the pool. You talk about a very public conversation when you're trying to invest that kind of money in an improvement, and this promise that it's going to be this economic driver. That if you build it, they will come type of deal. I think that's the wrong approach, and communicated that to the elected officials that in good conscience, I can't make that promise that all these things are going to develop because of this multi-million-dollar investment in improving O'Neill Pool. But I think we're on the firmest ground when we talk to the community and just say that this is an amenity that we deserve as a community. And just that messaging, that very honest and open messaging, telling the truth to the community. And I think that was well received, and that's something that was approved also by council here recently. So that's about a $12, $13 million project. We've seen price hikes related to COVID and just many of the challenges there. The council took that leap, and they approved that, and I think it's going to be an excellent project for the community. Let's talk about, just some easy stuff. That's sarcasm. But infrastructure, let's talk about roads. Right now, currently, we assess roads, use a formula for this, and we come up with, an improvement plan that we follow. Different communities use different programs, but council has made this pledge that we're going to invest $7 million in asphalt and concrete projects. That also includes sidewalk improvement. Hear very much from the community. This answer is not good enough, and I accept and realize that the condition of our roads, the potholes, stuff like that, the complaints and the criticisms that we give, what are you doing, why aren't you doing more, that kind of stuff, and this is the answer that's just not good enough. It's true, but I realize it's not good enough. We live in central Illinois. the thawing and the freezing and the thawing, it has an impact on asphalt and concrete. But again, that's not a good enough answer. Can we do better? Can we do more? And the answer is yes. Council's made that pledge that we're going to increase our asphalt and concrete funding an additional $2 million going forward. So we're going to invest $9 million into the improvement of our roads and sidewalks in the community. All stuff exciting that I can tell I'm putting everyone to sleep right now. But I mean, it is exciting to me. I mean, it's one of those things where you drive around the community and you say that you've had this kind of impact in this, it's this kind of improvement. And you hope that, you're playing the odds here, the percentages. You hope that you satisfy the majority, not going to ever be everyone, but you hope that you increase those that are satisfied with how taxpayer dollars are being spent. Something else, communicating, how the city uses taxpayer dollars. This is something that is very important to the elected officials when they're talking to their constituents, but it's also something that's very important to me as city manager. The credibility or the integrity that we have when we're stewards of the taxpayer dollars. It's very important to communicate that as often as we can. Scott Rathman is our finance director. Was actually he was an employee of the city, but truly was my first director appointment summer of 2018. And I implemented something that I've done in previous communities where every single month we have a finance director's report. It's high level. It's about 30,000 foot, but at least we're talking about the revenues and the expenses and some of the trends that we're forecasting and seeing. And that's something that always occurs at the last council meeting of every month, and it's actually expanded. We have a Budget 101 series that's on our website. We talk about the taxpayer dollars as often as we can. And it's just something that's easily accessible if anybody would like to see that. But again, it's our responsibility. We're local government. We're not a private company. Private companies, and we've got some major, very successful companies in this community, but on the private side compared to the public side, there's decisions that are made in the private side. Those decisions sometimes work, sometimes they don't. The additional cost for a good or a bad decision is passed on to the consumer. The consumer makes that decision if he or she is going to consume that product. But those bad decisions in the private sector, while I'm sure that there's accountability, a bad decision, people are likely shown the door where corrective action is taken and it never sees the light of day. I can't even think a bad idea in local government without it being subject to FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act. And that's just the world that I live in, working in the public sector. So trying to communicate, and I'm tying this back to the budget and just this approach that try to communicate, try to be as open and honest as we possibly can. Know that it's not always going to satisfy, but it's something that's very important to me in the organization. So let's see, how much time do I have? About 9 minutes. I think I truly, whoever did the happy dollars and said I'm leaving early, bailed on me. So I understand why they were happy, but I got about 10 minutes, and truly, why don't we take questions? I mean, I really could go all over the place. I could talk about the downtown. I could talk about what's coming next. I could talk about Ferrero Candy, Rivian, some of the major employers that we have in the community. We truly, real quick, I guess my stress every day, and I don't say this being arrogant or cocky, but I'm not going to swing and miss, to use a baseball analogy. And I'm very fortunate that I'm in a community that there is so much that's going on. The relationship with the town, the relationship with the county. Our wins are even greater if we work together. And I think that we do a good job of that. And the different things that are occurring in the community, the stress is trying to maximize those opportunities, these once in a generation type of opportunities that some communities never see this opportunity. So maximizing what's occurring in the community is the challenge, is the stress, believe it or not, and it's actually very exciting to be a part of this. So, and then real quick also on the elected officials, Jamie completely bailed on me. And, so,
because he's dying.
But I've got a mayor and 9 elected officials. All of them now, with the exception of Mayor Millawambwe, are all in their first term. Some were elected 2.5 years ago. Some were elected, or 3 years ago rather, they're midterm. Some were elected to the council in May of last year, so they have about a year on. But now consider this. So of all of them, except for Mayor Millawambwe, the majority, all for some, the majority for the others, has been during COVID. So even the normal interactions, everything's been virtual. Even the normal interactions before or after a council meeting, for the elected officials, there is no interaction. So talking about a trip that you're taking to New York, and then the other council member says, try this restaurant, or just those conversations before and after a meeting, they have not occurred. But I'm very proud of the council because we haven't skipped a beat. There is no action item that does not get completed that's on our agenda. Some might get tabled for further questions. I want to have a better understanding of it, but at the end of the day, the business of the city gets done, and very impressed with the elected officials. And I am so glad to be, I think, on the, coming out of COVID, the relationships, and that's something, that I just cherish, is that face-to-face interaction that we lost for a couple of years. So, okay, we got about 5, 6, 7 minutes. I'm going to take some questions. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Are the fountains going to be on trail this year?
The fountains?
Yeah.
I'm going to say yes, but I better get you a for sure answer. I see no reason why they would not be.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I just got to say what a great job in general. It seems to me like where my garbage pickup is right on time. Police, fire, I think City of Bloomington, as well as City of Normal. Does a great job of functioning cities. But it's more interesting to bring up controversial things. Pensions. What percentage of our budget, of our tax dollars, go to City of Bloomington pensions, and where do you see that going in the coming years?
It's a challenge. It was something that. Great question. It's a challenge that unfortunately, no, it really was, because it is one that public safety pensions, police and fire pensions was created statutorily in the mid-1970s. There was never a requirement placed on local government to fund those. So you'd have your actuarial study that would show that it should be funded at this amount, all the assumptions, that kind of stuff. But never was there a requirement to fund these. If we talk about a defined benefit pension, you need to look no further than the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, IMRF, which really covers the majority of local and county employees, and it's successful. Well, why is it successful? Because the requirement to fund that at the local level occurs every single month. So they're at nearly 100% funding, are able to use that, generate investment income off of that funding amount, and it's a solvent fund. Unlike the police and fire, the state is a completely different story. I'll talk about the things that I have control over. So police and fire funding, we're probably funded at about 50–55%, very low. Council a few years ago and the town of Normal made the commitment to fund at 100%, even though statutorily it's only required at 90%, and we're trying to catch up as best we can. The state of Illinois passed legislation where there is a consolidation of the police and fire funds, and you still have the local bodies that administer different things locally, but the investment is going to be housed at Springfield. Well, it's being challenged by the police and fire unions for a variety of reasons, and we're trying to work through that as well. What's interesting about that, for the City of Bloomington, we pledged that, and we were just talking about utility costs, electric costs. But the utility bill that residents pay, some of that goes towards the pension obligation. Once we get a decision at the state level, the conversation is very active amongst the elected officials that we will no longer need that. So is there a repurposing? Is there a give back to the community? And I think the appetite from a lot of the elected in the conversations that we've had is once it gets settled at the state level, we will likely remove all or in part that utility tax burden. So I don't know if that was the answer you were looking for.
Getting better or worse long term?
I think they are getting better, and truly, I think the credit goes to the elected officials. Prior to my arrival, Jamie would have been on this council, I believe, where pledged that 100% funding, trying to catch up as best we can. Slow process. Yes, ma'am.
You talked about a lot of projects that are going to be coming up, and I'm wondering if you have a preference for local vendors and local contractors on those, and what your selection process is like.
Totally, and so do the elected officials. If you can buy locally, that's definitely the way that you should do it. A lot of times you find in local government, and I'm just going to say it's laziness on our part. You get into a mode where you just go down the path of least resistance. A lot of times there's a master contract at the state level where you find things are much cheaper, but that's not always the best answer. Let's say we're talking about a $60,000 vehicle, and maybe the state contract is at $60,000, but I've got a local vendor that might be able to provide it for $60,700. I need to get that information in front of the council so that they can make the decision that we want to take the higher bid. But there's other reasons why you should consider something like that. So I am confident that in the procurement process that we do explore local as much as we possibly can, but sometimes it's just not feasible.
I have a follow-up to that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So we did recently bid on a contract, quite large one, and we came in $500,000 below the competitor, and the city chose an out-of-state broker. So I wonder if you have a comment on that.
I don't have a clue. What's the project?
The health insurance program for the city.
Okay.
Several $1 million.
Yeah, I am familiar with that one. And I know decisions were made that they went with this different vendor and felt that was the right decision. I can give more. Wasn't directly involved, but yeah, I am aware of that one.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can follow up on that.
Yes, ma'am.
Last I heard, and I'm not sure this is completely accurate now, but there were about 30 open positions in the city, and there were that you're not able to fill just because of the current hiring stuff and gaps with some pretty important stuff like housing inspection, rental, property inspection. What are the plans getting those filled? Where are we at with that? Staffing, is probably stretched pretty thin overall. Things like the arena, who's running it? How are we doing on staffing and how do we get the job done?
Yeah, we're doing great. Next question. No. No, real quick. I mean, that's another great question. We are, there are some challenges because the workforce is spread so thin. But it's an area that, I've said this to my directors and those hiring managers is, if we're able to suck it up, let's say we do a recruitment and we don't get a candidate that we're satisfied with. And if we're able to suck it up and not take someone that maybe is an ideal candidate or someone that steps in that we feel we can grow into this position, let's rebid it. And we've done that 2 or 3 times, and we found that we've done very well. We end up getting the candidate that we want. It takes a little bit longer. As far as the arena and the Coliseum, I have had very public conversations about this. I think that we've got an opportunity with the Coliseum. I know that I'm placing a high bet on that, but I think I'm going to see the return. We're going to go in front of council and ask for the approval to hire an entertainment director, and then we're going to outsource the booking of acts. But that person is going to run the Coliseum, the BCPA, and then all the entertainment that's occurring in the downtown area. So try to step up our game in that area, and I think we have an opportunity. But overall, staffing, I'll tell you an area that we are very fortunate is police departments. across the state with police reform and different matters, just the climate in law enforcement today. You find a lot of people are leaving. My son-in-law, my daughter and her husband, two grandsons, they live in Gilbert, Arizona. It seems like they're getting a lot of Illinois law enforcement that are moving to that area. But our Bloomington Police Department, we're not losing officers for that reason at all. It's very well paid. We've made major investment in some of the tools and resources that we have at the police department, and we are pretty solvent. And with our most recent recruitment, and this is unheard of, we had 157 applications for our vacant police officer positions. So, yeah. Okay.